So, yeah, I am Kathy Harr, and I'm with the Berkeley Tenants Union. We reformed the Tenants Union about 3 years ago. And right now, we're primarily a policy advocacy organization because we'd like to be doing more tenant counseling, we'd like to be doing more building organizing, but we need more active members. And it's unfortunate that tenants in Berkeley right now are kind of preoccupied with survival. Did you know that 18% of Berkeley is below the poverty line, according to the US Census? So you can join BTU, which is currently still, for a very limited time, free, right over there. Next year is an election year, and the thing is, we have a majority of renters in Berkeley. 57% of Berkeley is renters. So getting people that are going to do good things for tenants elected is just a matter of getting renters to vote and letting them know who to vote for. A little easier said than done, but we can do this. We can just with the renters, we can get back our city council. So the landlords have formed a political action committee. Their executive director's here today. And, let's be polite. At least she's listening politely. So the tenants are gonna have to get a lot more organized. But today, I wanted to talk to you specifically, as the way I fit into this whole tableau here, about our rent-controlled housing stock. So Berkeley has somewhere around 46,000 units of housing, and about 28,000 of those are rental housing. A couple thousand of those units aren't rent-controlled because they're new construction. We talked about Costa-Hawkins. A couple thousand of those used to be rent-controlled, but aren't rent-controlled anymore because Costa-Hawkins removed single-family homes and condominiums from rent control. So that leaves us with about 21,000 units that could be rent-controlled and about 19,000 that are rent-controlled at any particular time. But we are losing those units. We're kind of leaking them right now. So we've lost 403 units to Ellis Act evictions since 2000. We've lost another 324 to owner move-in evictions, and the number of owner move-in evictions doubled in 2014, and 75% of them are in South and West Berkeley. Since 2008, 175 units have been converted to condominiums, and there's a whole bunch more in the pipeline to be converted this year and next year. And then we have these sort of little demolitions where they allow people to remove unpermitted units. They may be under rent control. There's 4,000 units out there that don't have permits but are under rent control. And if an owner can get them empty, they can often get a permit to remove them. So we've lost a bunch of those units. And fires. We've had a couple of fires lately. And also combinations of units where they take 2 units and make them 1 unit. They can get permits to do that. And so we're leaking. We've lost at least 82 units that way in the past 5 years. The rent board's just started the process of going back and trying to count that. So that's 900 of those 21,000 units. That is not an insignificant number that we have leaked away. But now, there's also unpermitted combinations. One of the things that's going on right now that I see is it costs less to buy a duplex than it does to buy a single family home in Berkeley. And so people are buying duplexes and converting them to single-family homes without getting permits, so we can't even count that. And it's happening all the time. I have a whole list of examples I'm going to give to the city council one of these days. And then, of course, as mentioned, short-term rentals. Units are being converted to hotels. So since we can't have any new rent control until we get rid of the state Costa-Hawkins law, we have to preserve our rent-controlled housing. Now there's this sort of big explosive threat to that because we've always had this law, the demolition ordinance, and it says you can't tear down rent-controlled housing unless you can show that the owner can't make his legally required profit. If he can't make a fair rate of return on the building, then he could tear it down. It also says, though, that if that happens, they're supposed to replace it 1-for-1 with permanently affordable housing. Now, when I tell these stories about the demolition ordinance, this is about the point that things get complicated and people's eyes glaze over. So I'm really not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I did just update berkeleytenants.org with a lot of information and reference materials for those who are inclined. But what has happened is there's been some state court cases and some state laws that have kind of undermined the good demolition ordinance that we had. So in 2013, there was an effort to change the demolition ordinance, and we worked on it for years, and we sort of have a compromise agreement. And at the last minute, the mayor just sort of changed his mind and started up this new demolition ordinance. And so we had to organize, and we fought really hard a couple of years ago, and we fought that back. And as soon as the mayor figured out that he couldn't get what he wanted, the demolition ordinance just disappeared from all city agendas. And so the one that we have now, which is broken, is the one that stands. And so project after project and month after month, me and my friends go to the zoning board, and developers keep trying to find different creative ways to get around our demolition ordinance. And city staff helps them try out this way or that way or the other way. After all, a lot of the developers are helped by Mark Rhodes, who used to run our city staff, so they help them. So now what we've got is this summer the zoning board approved demolition of the biggest project so far, 18 rent-controlled units on Durant. It's the building right up next to the Berkeley Art Museum. It was 100% occupied, and all the units were occupied by students except for the resident manager's unit when the developer applied for the demolition. He claimed at the time that it was going to be infeasible to repair, which is another argument you can make. But that didn't fly with city staff, so then he went ahead and said he can't make a fair rate of return. The zoning board approved this, so it's the first time in the history of Berkeley's law that they've said that if he fixes up this building, he can't make enough money. It's empty now. He's going to get those Costa-Hawkins rent increases. The 18 units, well, the 52 that he's planning on building would be at market rate. But they said no, he can go ahead and tear it down. And instead of one-for-one replacement with permanently affordable housing, they said he could replace those 18 rent-controlled units with 3 below market rate units. So we dug around in our pockets, and we paid our $500 to appeal at the city council, and dutifully a lot of folks here, and a lot of other folks came down last week, but the city council's hauled it over till December 1st. So we really need people to come out, because this is the crazy thing. Not only are they saying he can't make a fair rate of return, he invited the Berkeley Fire Department, and don't ask me why they went, to come and practice in his building. And they tore out all the walls, and they cut holes in the ceiling in December of 2013, when we actually still had a lot of rain. He says he can't afford to fix this building, that's why he has to tear it down, but he invited the fire department to tear it down for him. So if the city council approves this demolition, they're just throwing our demolition ordinance in the trash. Meanwhile, we're trying to get them to come back to the table to fix the broken demolition ordinance that's been broken by all these court decisions and all these things at the state level. We are not going to succeed in getting what we want if we lose on this demolition appeal. So on December 1st at City Council, it's really kind of down to the wire. It's all about this one building. Because if we can stop the City Council from granting this demolition, then we can negotiate for a law that we need that's going to work. So the city did a new nexus study, which is where they figure out how much money it might cost to replace one of these rent-controlled units. But they actually are only looking at the same thing they look at for the affordable housing mitigation fee. So what staff is recommending is that for every rent-controlled unit we lose, we get $34,000 cash. Now the same study says that it actually costs over $41,000 just to mitigate the impact of the new rich person moving in who needs somebody to serve him coffee. And the study very clearly says that it doesn't even address the loss of rent-controlled units. But city staff's recommendation is $34,000 for every rent-controlled unit. It's probably more like $429,000 to actually build a replacement unit. And as we saw, nonprofit developers usually need about $100,000 to fix up a So if we don't win on Tuesday, December 1st, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, they can tear down anything in Berkeley. You know, you talk about the Adeline Corridor Plan, and you look at them upzoning in South Berkeley, and you say, well, where are they going to build these new buildings? I don't see a lot of empty lots there. They're going to tear down the rent-controlled buildings to build. We have to make our stand here and now. Thanks.